I was excited about this. I had that ADHD thing where I was like, I've got something at 8, so now I can't do anything else. No, no, I'm gonna
Oh
do other
no.
things. I did manage to do some other stuff, so thankfully it didn't completely tie me up.
Well, that's good. At least it didn't paralyze you all day.
It certainly tried. It got a bit close there. But yeah. Yes, Fred. Go get your phone, you can join. Oh, okay.
Hey, Perry.
Hello.
So, how was Gervais? Tell me.
It was good. It was good. Oh, thank you, James. Yeah, it was so I wanted to sort of do this as like a Q&A
Okay.
because I was sort of struck by the fact that you have a lot of perspectives I don't, considering that you're a parent, you know, Dutch born, living in Switzerland, a woman, that kind of thing. So I guess just sort of kicking it off with what has it been like from where you were born to get to now, and what part did ADHD play in all of that?
So, thinking back to my childhood, I don't think I ever really knew about ADHD. And then I really only recognized the ADHD slash autism, because it's both in my family's case. I only recognized it in my daughter, actually. So she
Okay.
was about 5, and we started practicing how to read, and she just could not sit still. It was adorable. She would constantly like roll over, she'd be playing with her feet while she's reading, and I was like, oh, maybe that's normal. She's 5. But then I was like, hold on, no one else does that. And so those were the first signs in my case. My dad was diagnosed autistic last year at the age of
Whoa.
74. So that was another puzzle piece that came
Yeah.
into play. Also, the concept of autism in women specifically is still very new. Like, all of the research is the last decade at most. So,
Does that not drive you crazy that all these scientists and doctors, these intelligent people, just completely ignored an entire demographic of the human race and just wrote you off as, well, you can't have it, so never mind? With no research, no basis of any kind. They were just like, yeah, you're girls, you can't have it. When?
that drives me crazy, but what drives me even more crazy is the doctors right now that haven't read the latest research and still say, like, oh, you smile, so you can't be autistic. And I'm like, what? Like, what?
Somebody's fiance and son both have ADHD.
Okay.
They're neurotypical. How can she support them to be able to understand what they're going through?
So essentially, from our point of view, what would we have liked neurotypicals to do if we needed their support?
So, in my mind, the first thing I think of is try to look at which areas they have a hard time with. For example, my husband noticed that paying the bills for me is really hard. Like, for me, remembering to pay bills on time, it always goes wrong. So I'm always late with paying bills. And so he said, okay, this is a task that stresses you out and that you have a hard time doing. You have a hard time starting. So I'm going to take that over. And then other tasks that are easier for me, like, for example, I love to cook. He was like, okay, you cook, I'll pay the bills. And then I hate cleaning the kitchen. So after I cook, he cleans the kitchen. Try to find areas of tasks that are harder for that person and then support them. That's for the partner. Now, for your kids, so what I've realized is I try different strategies with my kids constantly to try and understand what motivates them. So my daughter has ADHD and autism. So when she doesn't want to do her homework, I need to introduce little rewards. So each question she answers, she gets a Smartie, for example. Or if she finishes all of her homework, we're going to go watch a movie together. Or, I try to find these little rewards that are immediate because they need immediate dopamine from doing things. So immediate rewards that aren't expensive, because otherwise I started out with gifts, but that became expensive very quickly. So snacks worked better, little snacks. because you also don't want to create like some kind of food dynamic there. But little snacks or activities that they really enjoy, like, okay, if we get all your reading done, we're going to go to the park, you know? That's how I got her the most motivated, because she has a hard time doing homework, for example. Yeah. Is anything else that comes up for you, Greg?
Yeah, so patience is a big one for me, but I think only because in hindsight I found that there was a lot of that lacking in my childhood. But I think it's like you've said, it's really good to sort of focus on what they're good at and what they're not good at, because you can kind of solve half your problem by realizing what they like. So me, I actually really enjoy doing dishes. I find that it sets off like a completionism in my brain, and I feel like I've completed something, dopamine hits, and I'm happy. Whereas as for kids, I would say Paige didn't have ADHD.
No, exactly.
So she's just been living like this for 50 plus years, thinking, oh, I'm just the hyperactive youngest kid. I'm like, yeah, Mom, you have ADHD. And chances are Granny had ADHD, and so on and so forth. Because the men in Mom's side of the family and my father all have BPD.
Ah.
I don't have BPD, but my mother's not neurotypical. So I'm like, well, if you work it out, Mom's got ADHD, you know? But yeah, it was weird. Any more questions?
Yes.
Oh.
So husband and I are both ADHD. Is that maybe why people don't accept us or have friends?
We
So it's a dark one, but
tend to gravitate towards our own people.
So I think a lot of ADHDers do things that are perceived as strange or weird to neurotypicals. This could simply be, you know, being very open and welcoming and enthusiastic. And people kind of look at you like, what do you want? You know? It could also be, behaviors. Like, for example, I love to sing out very loud in my car when I'm driving. And other parents will see me arriving at school and I'm just like rocking out in my car, and they look at me like, that's a little, you know, like, you could be a little bit more subtle, right? So yeah, I think people pick up on the fact that you're a little different. And I also think, like Greg said, you will meet more neurodivergent people and probably gravitate to them immediately.
I think the way I characterize it is we give off a radiation, not in a negative way, but we give off this unseen sense, this radio frequency that hits neurodivergent brains, and they go, that one's one of us. Let's go be friends with that one. But I think the reality is so much more complex in that neurotypical behavior, and even our own behavior before we realized we were neurodivergent, we are conditioned young to do things a certain way. And most families will have a don't be too loud and open. Most families will have a don't associate with weirdos. Yeah. But most families will not go, hang on, I think we might be the weirdos. In which case, maybe you should go and make friends with the weird kids, you know? Because I suffered a lot with something very similar to what I think that question is describing, is I was not treated well by most of my peers as a kid because I was feckin' weird. But I didn't know how to not be feckin' weird, you know what I mean? Like, it brought me joy to be strange, so I kept doing it. I'm lucky that I still have quite a few friends now who are either neurodivergent or open-minded enough to understand that neurodivergence is something that exists.
And so on that kind of in that same vein, do you find it difficult to make and keep, this will be mainly, I think, towards Eva, to make and keep female friends who are neurotypical?
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry, I'm butting in, but female friends have always been the hardest for me to keep. Anyway, over to you.
Same. Yeah, actually, I find that, so one of the lovely things about ADHDers and autistic people is we info dump when we like someone. And so we'll be like, oh, I found this study about like, ADHD or whatever. It could be dinosaurs for me. I love dinosaurs. So I'll just be like, oh my God, they found this new study that actually, pteranodons are the cousins of emus or whatever. And I'll be super excited to tell someone. And especially women that are neurotypical will look at me and go, oh, she's trying to show off. And because they see my info dumping as I'm showing off my knowledge, which it isn't, I'm just excited to share. A lot of women will judge you like you must be some kind of snob.
Oh.
So yeah, I find that women are the most judgmental, neurotypical women. Neurodivergent women will just like ping pong info dumping, which is awesome. But neurotypical women like don't info dump around them because I don't know if they see it as intimidating or as competition. I don't know.
I always felt that info dumping was similar to teaching. I have discovered this pile of information and I want you to also have it. Let me give it to But I see what you mean. It's not something I would have experienced. But
I do have to point out, not all neurotypical women. A lot, yes, but I've got one very, very close. One of my bestest friends is probably neurotypical, mostly.
Yeah.
And she is the most supportive human ever. But I think unless you've built up that relationship and that trust with someone who understands and recognizes who you are and is able to not feel threatened and not think that you're just trying to attention seek in a negative way, then you're all good. But it takes a special kind of human.
Yeah.
Okay, I have more questions.
Okay.
After being diagnosed, do you feel that it changed the way you live your life? Okay. Thank you.
So for me, yeah, absolutely. I've really been working on being more forgiving with myself. Like, okay, I'm having a really hard time starting this task. For me, it's always something like my tax declaration or something. Like that will just wait for months because I'm just dreading that it's going to take me 2 hours to do it. Yeah. And so I just, every time I'm like, I need to do this, and I'm beating myself up about not doing it for weeks. And so I've learned to be a lot more forgiving. And I've learned to adjust my strategies. Like, okay, I can't do this by myself. So I'm going to need my husband to sit next to me and do whatever he's doing. I don't care what it is. But he needs to body double me so that I have the accountability to get it done. And I've also I've rearranged my house a bit. So I mentioned the hairbrush in the kitchen. But I've also mentioned, I have makeup in my car, for example. Because most of the time, neurodivergent people don't do very well with habits because we need to think about every step. And so putting on makeup is not a thing for me. I don't care. But I know I need to put it on when I have a special meeting in the office. So I keep my makeup in my car because at the last minute I'll be like, oh, I have that meeting today. I need to put on my makeup. And so I've just, rearranged my house, my way of doing challenging tasks. Also cleaning. I do cleaning in a group. I involve my kids. I involve my husband because otherwise I won't do it, Yeah.
I think
How about you?
The realization that it was ADHD, on one hand, doesn't come as a surprise to me because I knew there was something different. I just didn't have a name for it. And the thing is, when I went down the rabbit hole and started learning the names for things and what these things present as, I think I've found a way to recognize pain when it happens. So now when I get overwhelmed, I don't just go, oh, there's something, wrong with me. I go, oh, this is overwhelm. And this is probably because of this stimulus. So to counteract that, I need to adjust to this stimulus so that it'll lower that stress level. So it's like I don't feel like I've changed as much. I feel like I recognize what's happening so much more clearly that I can recover faster.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I haven't changed by knowing my diagnosis, because my brain is my brain. Like, you can stick any label on it, it doesn't matter. But I think knowing what it is gives you the tools that can help. So like I said, with the little rewards with my daughter, every question she answers, she gets a Smartie. I can do that with myself now. So like, okay, if I manage to get this task done by 4 p.m., I'll have some extra free time and I can watch an episode of whatever show I wanted to watch, And so just creating that fake dopaminergic effect, it really helps. And I think it's important to know what's going on in your brain, because it's the only way you can learn the strategies, right?
Because you are your brain. Everything else is stimulus receivers. Your brain is the main point. Well, I did it today. Well, Perry needed to go out and get stuff. And the way she phrased that is she needed me to go with her. And I was like, all right, cool. And she was like, I'll buy you a coffee. And I was like, nice. And in my head I went, and I'm also going to go buy a little Lego man to make myself feel better about leaving the house. And I did. And I was like, I feel much better now. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we all do that.
Question for Eva.
What was it like for your daughter getting diagnosed? How did she cope? Was it hard?
So very early on, I started talking to her about how people are different, right? Very simply put, I have brown eyes and my father has blue eyes. That's a difference that she can see, and she can see as not abstract. And so we have a lot of books. I bought a lot of books on how people are different, how we all have different color hair, and we all are shorter or taller or, fatter or thinner. And so all of these differences I tried to explain. I said there's also differences on the inside. So Mummy's brain works like this, and your brain is a lot like my brain, And so I explained what it means really to have ADHD, which is just sometimes we're going to struggle to concentrate. Sometimes we're going to struggle to finish tasks because it's no longer interesting, but it's still important. And I find she's actually done really well with it, because in her mind, she feels like her brain is special. Like, she likes to say, like, my brain is special. She's 7. So for her, she's like, I'm like a superhero, So for her, it's a positive, but she does realize that she has a lot more work to do than her classmates. So, she's having a hard time learning how to read simply because she doesn't have the concentration to read a whole book. And so we have to break it down into little, 4 pages, 4 pages, 4 pages. And she's like, but Mommy, why do I have to work so hard when other kids, they can just read a whole book? And I explained it as this. I said, listen, your brain is so fast that it gets tired fast too. And so your brain just needs a little break sometimes. And that's okay, because your brain is awesome at other things. She's great at math. So I always say, like, your brain finished all the math questions before the other kids. She's like, yeah, you're right, I'm awesome at math, So I try to balance out what she sees as a struggle versus what she sees as really easy for her. And she's accepted it really well. She doesn't quite understand ADHD or autism specifically as the words, but she understands how her brain works, and that's all that matters, really.
See, that's very sweet to hear, and actually super helpful. So I took a turn today. I had a bit of a rough couple hours today because I was trying to catch up with comments today on the videos, and some of them sucked.
Oh no.
And my shield didn't work today. It wasn't up. And I think I missed the wording, and I think the way you've put it is perfect. Is like, my videos are me reacting. I don't think about how I'm phrasing things. I just talk, right? And I get a lot of people pick and choose what they want to yell at me about, what hill they'd like to die on. And a lot of them are like, so that one about pathologic demand avoidance, like, well, I guess you can't work then. I'm like, oh, you're missing the context. We can do everything everyone else can do. I'm not saying that we are somehow restricted or missing things. We can do it. Exactly. It just is harder in certain areas. We work twice as hard. We get tired twice as quickly. Yeah. But we can do it. It's just that we would rather not, in some cases, be spoken to like that or be forced to do things that bring us no novelty or enjoyment.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, I'm terrible at maths, but I can read a book in a day. Your kid struggles with reading, but she would out maths me any day of the week, right?
Yeah, exactly. We all have our own skills, and I think our ADHD does make us work a lot harder sometimes, but in the end, we can all get the same result, and we can all be equally successful as any neurotypical person.
Yeah. Like, at no point did we say, oh, no, give us extra because we struggle. We're saying, no, wait a little longer while we catch up. That's all. That's
exactly.
A little bit of understanding.
Did you see that video about, who was it? I think it's that Professor Russell
Barkley.
Russell Barkley. He talks about how ADHDers should be doing exams. He says, we don't really need more time because that just makes us sit there for longer, which is torture. What we need is to be able to stop sometimes, stop the time, and be like, okay, now I get a 5-minute break. I'm going to walk around, I'm going to have some water, and then I'll come back and not be penalized for needing those 5 minutes. That's all.
That would have been way better when we were kids.
Oh my God, yeah.
I have got through so many exams so much easier than that with that. Like, just give me a break. I don't want to see any answers. You blindfold me for all you care. Just let me stretch my legs. Let me just take a minute. Sitting still for long periods of time freaks me out. I have a leg thing. My right leg is damaged from childhood, but it's more of a psychological mixed with physical damage. So yesterday, when it was getting really stressful at that gig, I couldn't get comfortable because my leg started to flare up, and then I can't move right because I can't sit in a position that makes it go away. And like in exams, that would have been so much easier to just be like, let me just walk up and down for a few minutes. Let me just get the pain to go away, and I'll be all good, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. For me, it was like whenever I got stuck on a question, I would just stare up at the ceiling and lose time. And then I would be like flustered because like, oh my God, I just spent 10 minutes staring at the ceiling. I'm going to fail this exam immediately. If they just given me a break, even 2 minutes to go and grab a glass of water or whatever, and I could have come back, my brain would have re-energized, you know? I really hope they do that at schools for my kids specifically, because that's going to be a struggle.
Whenever I struggled after an exam, my friends would say, well, if you were struggling on a question, you should have just moved on and come back to it. And I was like, I can't do that. But I never really could describe why I couldn't do that. Now I know it's because if I move on from this question, I will forget to come back.
It doesn't exist anymore as soon as I've moved on.
We have more questions.
Right, I'm going to go 2 silly and nice ones, and then we'll get into the serious ones again. So first off, Eva. Are you called Soothing Eva because of your lovely voice? Because it is very soothing. That's a genuine question. Duncan asked
Oh, yeah, I just see Duncan. Thank you so much. Yeah, so when I was in high school, I used to sing with this little indie band. And one of my best friends, he always said like, oh my God, you're so soothing. And so when I started a YouTube account, I called myself Soothing Eva because it was available, because who else would use that name, right? And so I just stuck with it. So it's been like 20 years and I have that username everywhere.
Love that.
That's awesome.
So, I think it was James.
Yeah.
Yeah, James has asked, Greg, have you listened to the metal cover of I'll Make a Man Out of You yet?
Who asked that?
James.
James, I have not listened to it since your recommendation, but I have heard it before. It is clearly one of the greatest Disney songs ever made, and the fact that somebody decided to turn it into a metal song just makes it better. I absolutely adore that song. So, yes, I have heard it. No, I haven't listened to it since you recommended it, if that helps answer your question.
Okay, right. So when this kind of goes off what you were saying about the comments and how it can affect you.
Okay.
So it's not a question, but it's a comment that I thought resonated. That the hard part is when non-ADHD people don't understand or even believe in ADHD.
I think that's a very big problem that still exists, is that it happens with a lot of things. We're not the only marginalized group, as it were. I think we're other, and a lot of people were raised to fear things that are other, and we attack things that we fear. So I find that a lot of the wrong types of neurotypical ideologies are to destroy us or to tell us that we don't exist and that we should just grow up. I had one comment that said that we weren't beaten enough as children. And I'm like,
God.
Jesus,
Wow.
That's a very old-fashioned way of looking at things.
So how do you deal with it? How would you... No, let me rephrase. How would you advise other people would deal with that? So if they come up against a neurotypical that is telling them, oh, ADHD doesn't exist, or they just don't get it, as an ADHDer, how would you then help them understand? Do you take time to try and help them, or do you just move on with your day?
Well, so for me, my family were not believers. So it was really tough convincing my mother that my daughter and I actually have this different way of processing things and of seeing the world. And with her, I did take the time. So I sent her the studies that I'd read. I sent her videos, some of yours actually. I sent her videos where I was like, look, this is what I feel when you treat me like this. This is what I feel when this happens. And this is how I process. That's differently from you. And after about 2 years, she's finally got it. Although she still says things like, well, everyone has a little bit of ADHD, which just, so cringe. But okay, I'll take it as a win. She's picked up that it exists.
Baby steps.
When it comes to strangers or people in my office, I don't even really mention it, to be honest. I just let them think I'm weird and, amen. If you're my people, you're my people. And if you're not, you're not.
You're not alone if you're weird.
I think, I think I'm not completely capable of this and I'm working on it, but I think the best advice is to remember that I'm not responsible for their feelings, only my own. And if they don't believe me, I don't know them well enough to care. There's a quote, if you have a problem with me, text me. If you can't text me because you don't have my number, you don't know me well enough to have a problem with me. And it's difficult to remember that. Especially today, I had a real hard time with it. But on good days, I'm like, I don't know you. I don't need your comment, you dumbass. Some of the comments I actually delete because I'm just like, everyone on this comment board is looking for help and advice and trying to feel seen and heard, and you're here pissing on all of that, and I can't have that. But I think the injustice sensitivity kicks in hard. So if somebody attacks, I don't care if they attack me. I don't care about my side of it. Anyway, I can just ignore them. But if they attack the community, if they attack Perry, as some of the comments have done, if they attack my people, my brain doesn't go, oh, don't worry about it. They're not real people. They don't exist because they're just a comment on a page. My brain goes, where do they live so I can burn their house down? Because the injustice kicks in so hard that it sort of overloads everything. But realistically, it's like, if you don't believe in ADHD, like, we're not the Easter Bunny, guys. Like, there's plenty of evidence. If you don't want to do the reading, I'm not going to do it for you.
Okay, next question. So obviously this is a bit different because obviously Eva was misdiagnosed.
Yes.
And you didn't remember. But when thinking back,
Yeah.
you could probably answer this. That's how has ADHD evolved as you age? Or are you the same as you were when you were a child?
So for me, ADHD was a lot more external as a kid, and it became more internalized. So when they talk about hyperactivity, there's two types, right? So there's physical hyperactivity and then there's mental hyperactivity. Mental hyperactivity just means that I have 10 ideas going around at all times and I can't shut any of them off. And so as a kid, I remember being also physically quite hyperactive. So I would climb trees constantly. I would go running in the forest to collect pine cones. I was very active as a kid. And as I grew up, it became more mental. So it was more, all of a sudden, my brain was just like making lists for no reason. Or thinking about really random facts while I'm doing homework,
Yeah.
Like, did you know that pteranodons, it's just, yeah. So for me, in that sense, it changed. But I don't think much else changed. Like my perception is still very much similar, and my concentration is still more or less the same. I'm very fast at working, so I can get things done very quickly. But if I can't finish it in 20 minutes, I'm gonna struggle to ever finish it. So, yeah. How about you?
I was a very hyperactive kid, and I was a very hyperverbal kid. I think I'm still pretty hyperverbal, but I can control it a little better now. And the physical hyperactivity has mostly left me. I do get itchy if I don't walk or do something. At least every 2 days, I need to go for a walk or something. But the living in my own head thing was very prevalent when I was a child, which we now know is disassociation. But I think the stronger elements of who I am as a person haven't changed. But I think my management abilities have definitely improved. Sort of part of me is going, I really hope I'm not the same as I was as a kid, because you kind of want to evolve as a human being. But I think there are elements of the ADHD that never got any easier. They just internalized themselves. Yeah. So now I tend to process quietly as opposed to doing backflips or climbing trees or trying to catch creatures to show to my baby brother, because he'll really like this. I mean, he's like a month old and I'm trying to catch lizards in the garden, and my mother's like, "What are you bringing that in the house for?" I'm like, "I want to show it to him." She's like, "Well, he can't even see shapes yet. What are you doing?" I'm like, "Yeah, but he might like the lizard. But don't put a lizard on his face. What are you doing?" So yeah, that element's still there to a degree. Yes, Perry.
Do you guys think it's a good idea to tell my new work colleagues that I have ADHD? Greetings from Austria.
Oh, hello, Austria.
Your colleagues? No. Unless you are seeking for accommodations from your boss, in which case you might want to tell your boss. And what I mean by accommodations is you might want more flexible work hours, for example. For me, this works. So I work really well in the morning because I have that first boost of energy. And then after lunch, I'm in a coma. So I switched now. They gave me flexibility to work whenever, as long as I get my work done. So I work in the evenings because I'm a night owl. I'm not going to be in bed by midnight, So if you need accommodations, you can tell your boss. I would not tell your colleagues if I were you, because it automatically ostracizes you and makes you, as Greg said, the other, right? You are the different one. And some people don't believe in ADHD or don't understand it, and that's going to scare them, and they won't want to work with you as much. So, but that's me.
I do have one thing to interject on that. I think it is organization dependent as well. So
yeah,
if you're new at a place, have a look around, do some research about the organization, like internally, because the company I work for are awesome, and they have an employee inclusion group for neurodivergence. So some of them you can absolutely be like, yep, that's me. Some of them, no. So I would suggest doing your research first and having a look and seeing, do you feel like you can trust the business? Not so much your colleagues, but the business first. And if you can, then it will be easier to get around that.
In my interview for my current day job, I brought it up in the interview to see. Because the whole point of an interview is not just to see if you're good enough for them, but if they're good enough for you, right? So I brought it up in the interview. I wanted to see what their reaction would be. And it turns out the organization I work for are very serious about neurodivergence and looking after neurodivergent colleagues. So that was sort of my test. I was like, if I bring this up and they all recoil, I'm going to go look for another company to go work for.
That's a good idea. I think that's actually a great idea.
Because they're going to have to adapt eventually. Whether they like it or not, they're going to have to change. Because as we learn more and more about the human experience, we adapt more and more to include more people in the human experience. And if they don't like it, they're the ones whose share prices are going to drop eventually, and they're not going to exist as companies. So that sort of diversity understanding is the future. So yeah, I thought I'll just take a hit and see what happens. And thankfully, I was interviewing for a company who care.
More questions?
Yeah, I used the COVID pandemic to kind of show them that flexible hours works for most people. And so, because we were all working from home, so I was
Yes.
like, okay, I can work whenever I want, like, from home, even on weekends if I need to catch up on my hours. So, yeah, I kind of used that to my advantage.
I like that.
Okay, more questions.
More questions.
I have lots of trouble being on time. This is from Marcus. Is that trouble you have as well?
Can I just answer Harry's question real quick?
Yeah, I just saw that.
Harry, in answer to your question, as soon as humanly possible. Right. Anyway, sorry, what was the other one?
Marcus has trouble being on time. Do you have trouble with that as well?
Time blindness. I know this one quite well. I'm not late for anything because I overcorrect.
Same.
In fact, I don't remember the last time I was late to anything because I'm too early to everything. But I will say this. I have lost track. Small time, like today, being ready for this, perfect. Way ahead of schedule. But if you ask me how old my TikTok account is, I can't tell you.
18th of August.
See, I don't know that. Perry
No,
knows
that's
that.
weird that I know that.
Like, I don't know the passage of time over a long period of time. If you say I've been doing this for 4 months, I'm like, I don't get it. What does that mean? What is 4 months? Sorry.
Yeah,
what-
so I'm similar to Greg. I'm very bad at remembering what time I need to leave the house to go somewhere. So instead of doing that, I set an alarm like an hour early. And so I always end up being early. No matter what I'm doing, where I'm going to, and especially if it's a meeting, I will get stuck for like 30 minutes just staring at my screen like this meeting's going to start, this meeting's going to start. Because I don't want to forget that I have a meeting. So yeah, time sucks, honestly. And I lose time all the time on the weekends, for example. I'll be like, oh, I'm just going to clean. And then all of a sudden it's 5 hours later. And I'm like, oh, the house is clean now. Shit, I forgot dinner, So yeah, time blindness, unfortunately, it's part of who we are. Yeah.
I think it kind of goes hand in hand with hyperfocus, because sometimes when I hyperfocus, it could be 8 hours and I don't realize. Like I could just be sitting doing something for 8 hours and I'll look up and the sun's gone down. Like, what the hell? Because we've got that internal clock that a lot of people have, ours just doesn't run. So our brain just goes, well, you're hyper-focusing, so it's been 10 minutes. You're like, it hasn't. It's been most of an afternoon.
Yeah. Or worse, I've had once where all of a sudden I was like, oh, I'm yawning. What's going on? It's 4 a.m.
Yep.
I'm like, what? Like, when? And I started that book at like 2 in the afternoon or something like that. So I was like,
I'm
okay.
just going to finish it.
Yeah.
While I'm here, I'm just gonna
Whatever.
finish it.
Forget it.
Okay, so on that kind of a similar track, but the opposite, what's your favorite strategy for making yourself stay in the moment of what you're doing? So how do you make yourself hyper-focus, I guess?
I can't make myself hyper-focus. Unfortunately, I have no control over what I'm going to hyper-focus on. Mainly because for me, it's usually something I'm either really motivated in the moment, or it's something that I'm really passionate about all my life. So, like the cleaning example was last weekend. I started, I think it was 10 in the morning, and I finished at like 5 in the afternoon because I was sick of my house not being clean. And so I just needed it to be clean. I don't really have any strategies for that, like how to start that. I just had a rage fit and needed to finish it. How about you, Greg?
I know there are things that run the risk of causing hyperfocus. There are certain things that I love that I know that if I engage with them, the chances are that this is all I will be doing for the rest of the day. But it's not that I can control the focus. It's that I know that I'm walking into that building. I know that that's the focus house. And if I walk in there, there's a very good chance I won't be walking out for hours. But I don't know that I can switch focus on. I just know that it can happen.
So if there's something, like if you're at work and you know you've got a task you have to do, is there anything that you do to keep yourself focused on that task?
Oh, okay.
Oh. For me, the best strategy, and this is very bad for your health, but for me, the best strategy when it comes to difficult tasks that have a deadline is waiting until the last day, and then I'll get it done in record time. It's terrible. I shouldn't do it because I lose sleep because usually I'm up until like 3 in the morning finishing it. But yeah, if I know that the deadline is 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, I need to give this presentation, I'm gonna get it done. Like, one way or another.
I did it the other day at work. I told my colleague that I'm going to go and do this task over there. And I put my music on this big speaker in the warehouse that we're in. And I was like, right, I'll see you when I'm done. Unfortunately, I knew I was hyper-focusing because unfortunately he interrupted me twice. And I could feel that, you know, the scratch in the back of your brain when you're like, I'm going to hurt you. But obviously you can't because you're a professional and you're at work. So I knew I had sort of engaged it. But it was the communication of like, listen, this is the task I feel needs to be completed. So leave me alone. And here I go. Right. That in previous jobs has helped. I'm like, I've made my coffee. The music is on. And I know what the task is. Goodbye. I will be back when it's done. You know what I mean? That's sort of the only way I can really do it is sort of steep myself in that moment and say, well, it's a big task. It's going to take a while. If I engage with it with some prep, I'll probably end up doing nothing else for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question. Did either of you experience a kind of grief with diagnosis?
So for me, yes, absolutely. Not so much a grief of finding out, but more a grief of what I could have done with my life if I had known sooner. So for me, it was, I don't like to wallow in the past, but realizing that my parents could have seen this so clearly if they had even cared to get me evaluated, that hurt. And to think how much time and energy I put into being moderately successful when I could have been so much more successful if I had known earlier. That hurt, and that took me a long time to get over. And now that I have, with my kids, I don't have that doubt that I'm gonna get them to, overcome every obstacle. But for me, that was painful. Yeah.
I grieved hard. I grieved the kid I was. I grieved the person I could have been. I grieved every bad week, every shoddy memory that I had that could have been something else. For a little while there, I was very much dwelling on the fact that this could all have been avoided, until it occurred to me that no, it couldn't. There's no time travel. I can't go back. This is what it is. This is what happened, and this is the sequence, the only sequence it could ever have happened in. But yes, you do feel a sense of unfairness. You feel a sense of loss because you think about the potential human you might have been, but you were never going to be that human because you're the one you are now. You can't grieve a person that never got the opportunity to exist because they're you, and you just have to now live with what you are. But obviously I've got a few other things that I deal with, including a lot of trauma and grief for other things. So it all sort of mixed together in this ugly way. Thankfully, it doesn't last very long. You sort of go, that sucks. I'm very upset about that. And then your brain goes, great. Now we're going to move forward or what? You're like, okay, let's go.
Yeah, I think the trauma we experienced because we were neurodivergent and people misunderstood us caused the most damage, probably. So I think that part is really hard to live with, knowing that if they had known, maybe they would have done better. But you're right. I mean, they wouldn't have, because they wouldn't have known, and we only know now, and all we can do is do better in the future for whoever comes in the future. Our kids, our nephews and nieces, like you guys said, anyone around us. So I try to focus on that. Yeah. Because
it's you've lived your whole life with people saying, why can't you follow the rules? And you're going, well, why can't you explain the rules? Because your rules are dumb.
Why didn't you give me the list?
We thought you'd already just have them. Like, when would I have had them if you didn't hand them to me? I think the big one for me is I was a child. I was not supposed to do better. You were. And it's that element of like trying to reframe the adults. And they're like, you were always such a difficult kid. Like maybe you were just not very good at looking after me. Maybe you should not just pile this at my feet, but also take some onus, you know? But we could rant about that all year, you know?
I have more.
You have more?
So first off, have you bought Perry the Shark blanket?
I have not bought Perry the Shark blanket yet.
Okay, next. Have you had any problems? Now I know the answer is yes, but I'm asking anyway. Have you had any problems with being misdiagnosed?
Both of us have, right? You were misdiagnosed as depressive, right? Mm-hmm. You were on antidepressants for a while. How many years was it?
I was on antidepressants. I think it was a year. It was about a year, but it was quite a year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's sort of the argument we had last time, where I was like, if the medicine does, they say that if the medicine doesn't work, it's because of your brain chemistry. Like, yes, because you're diagnosing the wrong problem.
Yeah, I was misdiagnosed as generalized anxiety disorder for 2 years, and I was on Prozac for a year, and it helped me not at all. It just made me very tired. That's all. And then they said, oh, it's because your brain is relaxing, and now you're sleeping better. And I'm like, no, I'm just really tired. I'm still equally as anxious and depressed, but I'm really tired now.
Nothing improved. I'm just slow.
Yeah. Yeah, basically.
I was like a zombie. I couldn't function. I could barely feel emotion. It was awful. Yeah. And that just made me sort of, and now I know that I was actually having a weird kind of flashback because they tried to do that to me when I was a kid too. So I was like having this sort of Vietnam style PTSD flashback to being on medication before. And yeah, I was just like looking back, I'm going, why didn't you try, I don't know, diagnosing something different? Because clearly that wasn't working, so clearly you got it wrong. Oh, no, you just need to give your brain chemistry time to adjust. You're like, yeah, because you're feeding me the wrong chemical, dummy.
Yeah, or they tell you, like, let's try a different antidepressant. You're like, it's still not doing anything. Why am I doing this?
Guys. But the thing is, you're so hungry for a diagnosis that makes you feel better that they're like, oh, you probably have depression. You're like, okay, you're the doctor. And now you're like, you're the doctor who probably should have known better. Because, yes, I definitely have depression. But the origin of that depression is not depression. The origin is ADHD and PTSD. So you're not treating the cause, you're treating the symptom badly. Because, honestly, it would have done a lot more. It would have been a lot more effective if they said, listen, I'm going to prescribe you one puppy. And I'd have been like, a puppy? I feel so much better. And it would have worked. Yeah. But actually, it would have also been because it was dealing with my dopamine levels and my ADHD and all of that. Instead, they were like, take this unpronounceable thing. And if that doesn't work, well, oh well.
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
This is specifically for Eva.
Cool. Can I prop Eva up in front of you while I go make coffee?
Yeah, I'm just going to make sure I don't lose my spot.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I don't have to hold the phone. Okay, good.
Yeah, you won't have to hold the phone. I'll just prop Eva up there.
Eva, did you experience a worsening of your symptoms after becoming a mum because James can't mask as well now?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be honest, not so badly after the first one. After the first one, I was still coping pretty well. I was still managing to mask at work and hold up with everything that society asks of us. But after the second one, I had a serious crash. Because all of a sudden I was taking care of 2 tiny humans, and they don't take breaks. I mean, any parent will tell you this. Little kids, do not take a break. They need you, they want you, they want to be on top of you 24 hours a day if they could. And yeah, it's a lot of overstimulation and a lot of needing to take care of other people and no time or silence for yourself. So yeah, with the second one, oh my God, that's when I was like, okay, I'm still working, but my job is going to suffer. And I thought it was normal, you're like, oh, kids, all parents go through this, sleep deprivation, and you're tired and you're overwhelmed, and everyone feels like this. But no.
How did you balance that? Like, how did you start to deal with that in a more positive way?
So when I went back to work, when my youngest was 6 months old, I went back not at 100%. I went back at 70% because I just felt I couldn't. I couldn't possibly manage everything. And I had to force my husband to take some of the household tasks. So before my second was born, I was doing the cooking, the cleaning, the childcare, and working. And it was just too much. Also, we have 2 dogs. So dogs, there's dog walking and yeah, it's just my agenda just felt like there weren't enough hours in the day. So yeah, after the second one, I was like, okay, listen, you're gonna have to cook and clean because you're not helping me out with the kids, so at least cook and clean.
Yeah, you need to
Yeah.
balance the tasks of the house because you both live in the house.
Yeah, you'd think. So yeah, that was a major thing. And once my second was about a year old, I started a hobby, which is gaming.
Right?
But yeah, I know that's not super healthy, but and it's quite addictive, but whatever.
Yeah, it can be.
But gaming, yeah, gaming really helped. And finding a community. Finding a community helps. Like being able to talk to you guys, being like, hey Greg, today was a shit day. Like, and that's amazing. Yeah.
Right, I'm going to give you back to Greg now so I can catch up. There are loads of questions.
Do we miss a few?
Has either of you tried CBT therapy? No, CBT.
CBT.
Cognitive behavior therapy. Cognitive behavior therapy. Sorry, get the words out properly.
No, I've been to a lot of therapists in my life. I think I've seen 6 or 7 therapists. I don't think I specifically tried cognitive behavioral therapy. It was more like, I don't want to call it exposure therapy, but like talking about complex PTSD, talking about childhood trauma, talking about anxiety, where the anxiety comes from, things like that. No actual behavioral changes. It was more just traditional talk therapy.
Yes.
How about you?
I do talking therapy, but my first therapist was very talented, but there was no connection. This current therapist is an absolute angel. So talking therapy is what I do, but I think that works for me because all I really want to do is talk. So
Yeah, I just end up crying every time, so.
Yeah, same.
yeah.
So how do you speak up for yourself when doctors don't listen?
Oh.
For myself, I've brought medical studies to my doctors and been like, listen, you said this last time. Well, actually, that's wrong, and look at the new research. And I've done this quite a few times, actually, where I've had to, woman-splain how ADHD or autism looks in a woman because a lot of doctors don't take it seriously. They're like, oh, but you're not jumping up and down and you're not destructive and you can work, so you can't have ADHD. And I'm like, that is so like the 1980s. We're in 2023. Like, wake up. So yeah, I bring the research. I make a list. A lot of the times I'm like, listen, these are all the things that I've noticed. And yeah, all of them together look like ADHD, so take it seriously.
That phrase, if you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras.
Yeah.
If I bring you a list of things that sound like ADHD, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. If the list says ADHD symptoms and I'm exhibiting ADHD symptoms, chances are I have ADHD.
No, Greg, it's actually anxiety and depression. Don't you know that?
Anxiety and depression. You're under a lot of stress, clearly.
My daughter's first therapist said she probably just needs more friends. And I went,
God.
and I just like, okay, thank you. And I left. I was like, no, forget it.
This conversation is going nowhere.
Yeah.
I decided after after I started going down this journey and stuff, and I went to go speak to my GP about getting put on an ADHD list so I could get re-diagnosed because, well, actually, I went to my doctor to say, listen, I got diagnosed as a kid. The red tape to get my diagnosis notes from South Africa will take about a year, but I could do it if you want, or you can just, retest me. And he's like, yeah, we're probably going to have to retest you. I was like, okay. I mean, I've just told you that I've been diagnosed. He's like, yeah, but not by British doctors, so nobody cares. So you need to go back on the list to get re-diagnosed. I'm like, okay, so where does that leave me? He's like, well, technically, by our records, you don't have ADHD yet because we have to re-diagnose you. And I was like, no, I have ADHD. You just don't want to take that doctor at his word, and you want me to get re-diagnosed. So what are we supposed to do? He's like, well, I'm like, what are we supposed to do? Like,
Yeah.
Don't screw me around. Let's figure this out. He's like, I'll put you on a list. Great. Thanks, buddy. Now we have no confirmation, so now I have to phone them and be like, am I even on that list?
Did you forget about me?
Yeah, of course I forgot.
Like, oh yeah, Greg, yeah, I think I put you on the list a year ago.
Yeah, he's like, you'll get an email. You just got to fill that email out. So I did, and he's like, once you fill it out, we'll send you a confirmation. And it took like 2 weeks before my brain went, hang on, I didn't get that confirmation. And now I'm like, bet you I have to start again. But the problem is, it's not like I can call and say, hey, can I talk to the doctor? The people on the reception or whatever who answer the phones are going to be like, no, you can make an appointment. Like, great. I guess I'll do that again then. So I do have to do that. But I was supposed to call them on Friday, and I didn't remember to call them on Friday.
We're going to do it in a month.
That's okay.
Right. And more questions.
More questions.
So this one, it might be very serious. It is serious. It is very serious.
Serious
so
time.
What do you do when you've hit absolute rock bottom? When you can't feel any light, everything is darkness, you are at the lowest of the low. What are your coping strategies for getting out of the darkness?
So for me, I have been in what I would consider rock bottom depression twice. The only way I made it through was through friends or family. So for me, it was like both of them were before I had kids, because as soon as I had kids, I was like, I can't reach rock bottom. I can't, because they depend on me, so I haven't been able to. But before that, it was friends. I've just messaged someone at 4 a.m. and been like, I'm not doing well, and I need you to check up on me. And that, she was an angel, one of my best friends back then, and she just came over to my house. She was like, I can tell you're not doing well. Like, your house is a mess. There are dishes in the sink for the last month. They're basically crawling out of the sink themselves. And she was like, I'm going to go buy you some food. I'm going to clean your kitchen for you, and we're going to figure out what's going on. And yeah, I honestly, I will always thank her for that, because I don't know what could have happened if it had gone on much longer. And the second time was actually after a breakup. I thought I had found my soulmate. We'd been together for 3 years, and then I found out that he had been cheating on me. And he had stolen quite a bit of my money from my bank account. I found all of that out in the same week, and I just was like, what kind of world am I living in? Why am I even here if it's such a shitty place? And again, it was my brother. I messaged my brother, and I was like, I need you. I just wrote, I need you. And he hopped in his car, and he came over the next day. And so yeah, for me, it's always been those few people you can always trust that will show up. Those people have saved me. Yeah. How about you? Ooh.
Sorry. I'm helping James out because of...
That's awesome.
James said that you felt weird being the number one gifter, so I didn't realise it was going to make a noise when you were making such a serious point. I'm very sorry.
So, yeah, I think
That's not me.
the first.
Thank you for making.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Greg.
The first major time. I don't want to get too dark or get in trouble with this. But the first time it got real bad, I remembered my brothers because I have two younger brothers, and I did a lot of raising of them when I was a kid. So they sort of looked to me as a parental figure to a degree, and that level of responsibility and what it would do to them was enough. But I have a few friends who I won't name because I haven't asked their permission to name them on lives. So there's a few friends that I've had for about 2 decades that are absolutely life-saving, supportive. I could call them at 5 a.m. and I'd be fine. And then somewhere along the way, I met this person here, and she's definitely the one to sort of, when I start to disassociate, when it starts to get real ugly, she's the one that sort of goes, right, what do we need to do? What's going to help? And we've sort of got this unwritten list of things that work. We go for drives, and Perry just lets me play music, and she knows that I'm starting to come out of it when I start singing along to the music. And then for when it's dark but I can't pull out of it, there's Lilo and Stitch, which is basically my save me movie. And then there's like a bunch of songs that are, I don't listen to them often because they're there for crisis. They're there to force the mood back up. But mostly it's people. I have people.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have people, who knows what would have happened, It also helps that I have cats. I feel like when you are expected to be in charge of something, when you're expected to be responsible for a living creature, their existence tends to help you stick around.
Yeah.
Because, my cats are my kids.
You may not feel like they've got someone. Okay, more questions.
Okay.
Do you have a hard time trusting your therapist?
Sorry, what? Do you have a?
Do you have a hard time trusting your therapist?
So for me, I have no hard time expressing my feelings or my past or my history. I'm very straightforward. I'm like, I walk in, I trauma dump everything on them, and I go, this is the situation now, this is what I'm dealing with, what I'm having a hard time with. How can you help me? What I have a hard time with is trusting their perception of what my problem is and their diagnosis of whatever's going on. Because I have been misdiagnosed so long, and I have been told that it's all my parents' fault, which, sure, yeah, but that's not going to help me. Like, realizing that my parents messed up, yes, now I need to accept it, but what can I do to move forward? And so when a therapist just wants to push me back all the time to my childhood, I'm like, this is not what I asked for. And so I've dumped quite a few therapists over the years and been like, this isn't working. Like, this is not what I need.
The therapist I currently have, I got real lucky. Like that lottery of these are the therapists you have access to, and I picked her. And Jesus, she is spectacular. So the short answer is no, I don't have a hard time trusting my therapist, because I also understand the concept of oversight for therapists. Like, whether I trust her or not, she ain't allowed to do certain things, say certain things, or share certain things. She's legally not allowed to do that. So my pain, my trauma dump, as you say, doesn't go anywhere. She hears it, and then she's not allowed to tell nobody about it. And that's part of it. That works for me. But also, I definitely think I found one of ours, one of our people.
Yeah.
And she has said some things about childhood and who I am as a person that have shattered all illusions that my brain could concoct. She's been really, really helpful, to the point where she's also got a pretty dark sense of humor, which I need. Mm-hmm. My previous therapist, because I grew up with my mother, right? And nurses' humor oh boy, dark. It's their coping mechanism, right? So when I was making jokes to my first therapist, it just was like crickets.
Right.
I make jokes to this therapist, and she genuinely laughs.
I remember you made one joke to the first therapist. You told me about it afterwards, and she said to you, "Why do you think that's funny?" And you were like, "Because
because it is objectively funny."
After that, you find it actually, I don't think I'm going to see him anymore.
Yeah.
It's not for me.
That joke was she threw the joke back at me, and I'm like, yeah, but it's objectively funny. Yeah. She's like, yes, but it seems very traumatic. I'm like, yes, because if I don't laugh, I'll cry.
Have you not just listened to me tell you my life story? Of course it's traumatic.
I just told you my really traumatic childhood, and you're like, why is that funny? Because it's objectively funny. It shouldn't happen. But no, it was. She's got this sort of. She sort of embodies the phrase, like you were saying, your therapist keeps trying to throw it all at your parents.
Yeah.
My therapist is like, make no mistake, the guardian figures of your life screwed up. But while your pain is not your fault, your healing is your responsibility. Yes, they hurt you. They did, and they are guilty. But you have to recover. That's not for them to do, because it's like, if they came and apologized, what difference would that make now? Don't you just want to be a person? You're like, yeah. It's like, well, then you have to choose to heal. Like, oh my God.
Okay, I've got another question.
It's really that simple. You got another question? Jesus, notepad is full.
Do you feel that it's worth putting yourself back out there after diagnosis?
I mean, we're both in relationships, but I would say yes.
Absolutely. I think if I were to pick a partner now, I would be looking at completely different things.
Yeah?
I really do, yeah. So, my husband is neurotypical, I think. I mean, I have a slight suspicion his dad might be autistic, and so he might, I don't know. But he seems to be neurotypical. And, I love him, and he's very kind, and he has adapted to me. So he fills in the goals, the gaps where I don't, I'm not able to do some things. But I think if I were to look for another partner, I would be a lot more looking for neurodivergent people.
That comes with its issues as well, just so you know.
Yeah. Yeah, so I read this thing. It was a post that said, like, ADHDers tend to be with autistics because ADHDers are quite messy because they forget things, whereas autistics need places to be neat. ADHDers tend to forget appointments, whereas autistics will never forget appointments. And so they complement each other. I don't know what that means for people like me that are both, but I think I would look for another neurodivergent person. I wish there was an app like that, like Bumble for neurospicy people,
Harry, you seem to have had a personal investment in that statement.
I feel like I've been personally attacked. But no, I'm very messy. Yeah. You need everything in a place.
Yeah.
So that means the house is very messy. But you also forget appointments, and I don't. So what does that mean?
Balances out nicely. It means we're probably both a little bit autistic too.
I need to take a break, but before I do, I have to say this.
Okay.
James wanted me to let you know that your friendship, both of yours, means a lot to him.
Aww.
And he said he thinks...
That's so sweet.
But I made a point that I had to tell you. So
yeah,
there you go.
That is very sweet.
I'm going to lay off asking you questions for a little bit because I've written them. I've got 3 pages worth of questions that I've asked you. And there was a couple of things that I noticed in the chat that I wanted to research as well that I've written down for my point. So Duncan mentioned, have you heard of WRAP? And that stands for Wellness Recovery Plan. Duncan is building one and thinks that it will be useful. It's by Mary Ellen Copeland in the States. So a Wellness Recovery Plan. Is it a Recovery Action Plan? Did I miss action? There should be an A.
Yeah, WRAP, Wellness Recovery Action Plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that's something I've written down so that I can research.
Okay.
Somebody asked about what the treatment is like in the UK. Lots of people asked about medication, but I'm steering away from medication because this application doesn't like me talking about medications. So I'm trying to keep that offline. So if people have questions specifically about medication, that would be an offline question, please. And can't remember who mentioned it. ASD sexing paradigm is something that I need to research.
Okay.
So my work here as interviewer is complete. I hope you've had a lovely time. Now I'm going to just be a guest.
Now it's chaos, yeah?
Now you can descend into chaos.
Okay.
You can do you.
To just very
You were
quickly,
wonderful, Perry. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
to just quickly answer two of those questions in a very vague way, I don't know what the treatment's like in the UK because I haven't been treated yet in the UK, and I don't know anything about medication because I'm not on any.
Yeah, no, I think this was awesome. And thank you so much for inviting me to be on, Greg. And when you do start your podcasts, I would love to join at any time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, then I'll see you both soon, and good night.
Night.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much for joining the live. I'll see you soon.